Hi, everyone. Welcome to Epic Chats. My name is Jennifer Shu, and I'm the head of U.S. development at Epic Foundation, which fights to change the lives of disadvantaged children and youth around the world through our portfolio of high-impact organizations. So first, a bit of housekeeping. Today's chat will include an opportunity to chat with our amazing guest, Mary Biggins. So if you have any burning questions, please, during the AMA, add them into the window or upvote the ones that you would really love to see answered. So with that, over to you, Debbie.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Debbie. I head up Epic in the UK. As Jennifer said, we're really, really excited to welcome Mary Biggins to today's Epic Chat. Many of you, of course, know her already. She's currently the co-founder of MealPal and was the co-founder of, or is still, the co-founder of ClassPass, the very first unicorn of the decade. So quite big news. Mary is also one of our amazing Epic pledgers. And for those of you who don't yet know about the Epic Pledge, for entrepreneurs, oh God, sorry, lost my connect. Can you still hear me, Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So for those of you who don't yet know what the Epic Pledge is, for entrepreneurs, it's when a founder makes a promise to give a small percent of their success, from an exit to social good. It's not legally binding, and it's essentially a promise to yourself that if you succeed, you'll give a little back to others who are more vulnerable. All our entrepreneurs and all our VCs kind of within the Epic Pledge community tell us that it's a really great way to add purpose to their everyday. You also get to join an amazing community of pledgers with people like Mary, but of course also the CEO and co-founder of Giphy, Alex Chung. I'm sure some of you will have heard that they've just been acquired by Facebook for 400 million, so that's quite exciting. For those of you who do know Epic, you'll know that we are all about giving back. And at each webinar of our series, we ask our speakers to choose one organization from our portfolio of 26 high-impact organizations all around the world, which all look to work with children and youth. This week, Mary has chosen New Classrooms, which is a US-based organization which creates a customized curriculum for middle school students in the form of a personalized math program to meet each student's learning needs every single day. Now you'll see kind of a pop-up in the top of the corner here. There we go. If you click it, we'll open a new tab. You'll get to learn a bit more about New Classrooms. You'll have the opportunity to make a donation. Feel free to be as generous as you'd like to be. I think that's it from me. I wish everybody a good summer. And back to you, Jennifer and Mary.
Great. Thanks, Debbie. So, Mary, one thing that really struck me when we were chatting earlier is that you didn't know you were an entrepreneur when you first started building businesses. So what were some of your early ideas?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm really risk averse and sort of always had this vision that I would work for big companies and be in this very corporate type of world. But when I look back on it now, realizing that I'm an entrepreneur, there were many things that I was building early in my life, I think, without realizing it. So when I was in college, I'm a big Red Sox fan, and it was before the Red Sox had won the World Series. And in 2003, when they didn't win, but they came really close, I sold T-shirts on campus. I was in school up in Maine, and I sold these shirts that everyone on the team was wearing, and made enough money to buy tickets to one of the playoff games. Similarly, in college, I ran the yearbook, but I really ran it like a business. And at the end of the year, because we had done so much in ad sales and just more than had been done in prior years, we ended up with $100K left over to sort of return to the college. And the college was sort of like, wait, what is this? This isn't how it works. So I think
$100K?
Yeah, we sold a lot more than we had in prior years. And so I think I have sort of always been a builder without really realizing that I could apply that to actually building businesses. I think it really took kind of going out there and actually starting a company and seeing other people do it to realize that I could as well.
Amazing. So you had that spark early on. So fast forward to 2013, you'd graduated with a liberal arts degree, or I'd like to say a degree in creative problem solving as a fellow liberal arts graduate. Yeah. And you'd gotten some great startup experience in your belt. I think you were at Vistaprint, and then you were the 5th employee at Betterment. Mm-hmm. And then you began training for a triathlon that led you to coming up with not one, but three ideas. So how did you decide to run with ClassPath?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, so much of entrepreneurialism, there's such an element of luck and kind of using your own personal experiences to create things. And so, back in 2013 or maybe even 2012, I started doing triathlons. Wasn't even my idea, was really influenced by a friend and sort of thought like, oh yeah, I like to run. And I guess I could try biking and swimming. And, the triathlon that a whole group of us was training for was in Hawaii, and it was in late March, which meant that we needed to find a way to do bike training in New York City in the cold winter months. And so I started taking a lot of spin classes, and this was relatively early days of spin. There was really just Soul Cycle and Flywheel, and both of them were fairly unknown at that point, only a small number of studios. But by starting to go to those classes, I started to explore into other spots in the boutique fitness world. And one of the really early learnings that I had was most studios are willing to give you a class for free if you're a first-time customer. And so one of the first products that we created was called the Classtivity Passport, and that was intended to help other people discover boutique fitness. So it was a way for you to go and sample all of the boutique fitness studios that were just starting to kind of pop up onto the scene in 2012 and 2013 in New York City.
Wow. So it sounds like you kind of iterated a little bit along the way in the early days of ClassPass. So I read somewhere that ClassPass went from 35 paying customers in the first month to more than 1,000 and 100K in recurring revenue in just 6 months.
Yeah. So we had those first, so it was June that we had the first 35 customers. And, if we were to look at who those customers were, probably about half of them were somebody who I knew or who I had taken boutique classes with and convinced to sign up. So we started really small. And when we were building ClassPass, we had this Classtivity Passport product, we had this search engine product, products that weren't really viable products, but other things that were taking some of our attention or some of our focus. And with ClassPass, we just kept doubling our users every month. It was a really simple way to start where we just were able to kind of keep growing and keep doubling the users. And by doing that, we were able to learn really quickly. We made so many mistakes in those first 6 months, but some of them ended up being really great mistakes. I remember in August, we ended up sending an email. And at the time, we didn't have great studios on ClassPass. We had very, very good studios, but we didn't have, Exhale or the bar method or Flywheel. We just hadn't gotten to that level of partnership yet. And so we wanted to understand what the value of having some of those really top studios on the platform would be. And so we created a marketing email, and, this is I'm just creating little marketing emails in MailChimp and copying in some email addresses and sending them out. And we intended to send it to a couple hundred people, and we accidentally sent it to the entire list. And it was a great thing and a terrible thing because
how big was the entire list?
Well, at the time it was only about 3,000 people. So we're still talking
only 3,000. Okay.
Yeah. So we're still talking
200 to 3,000. All right.
Yeah. So we're still talking small numbers, but it was great in that people really signed up, and that the studios, having really great studios, it really resonated with people. At the same time, we of course had to figure out how to get students into these classes where we didn't yet have an agreement. And it actually led to some really great partnerships. I think in hindsight, being able to really send customers to a studio like Exhale, and for Exhale to see, oh, these are our clients, and these are people who we want coming in our doors and discovering our studio, ended up being really valuable. But certainly doing that was a scary thing at the time. I think similarly, I'll never forget, we did this marketing campaign for Halloween, and we had all of these really witty slogans about, working out and, a deal so good it would scare you. And the promotion that we did was if you signed up for ClassPass, you would get a Lululemon gift card. And so, of course, it did incredibly well, and we had tons of people buying, and we had to then go and buy all the Lululemon gift cards and sort of manually fulfill them. And certainly never imagined that we were going to be buying that quantity of Lululemon gift cards, but it really just made sense to put something in front of the audience that they were familiar with and they knew, and that certainly drew people to the product and was a great way to grow in the space.
Thanks for sharing a little bit of your secret sauce.
Yeah.
I wish we had more time than half an hour so we could talk about ClassPass forever, but you're actually a repeat founder. And so at one point, I think you mentioned ClassPass had gotten to 200 employees. You'd really, built up a solid team. And I guess back to what you said earlier about being a builder. versus an optimizer. Tell me about, that the early days of your new startup, MealPal. This was in, I think, 2016. You wondered, what if we could do for restaurants what my mom did for my family?
Yeah.
So can you explain what you meant by that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I grew up in a big family. I am the third of 7 children. And, when you have, I think, that many kids, you really never go to restaurants. So it was very rare that we would go to a restaurant. So my mom was always cooking all of our meals at home. And what I didn't appreciate at the time, but I really do now, is that she was able to make with really great efficiencies and economies of scale. I think, she didn't spend that much longer cooking than our neighbor with 2 kids. It's just that she was able to kind of get value out of making a lot of the same thing. And there really was no customization. So to this day, I think all of my siblings and I still have our pancakes the same way and our waffles the same way because, my mom would make them all one way and cut them up and split them up onto 7 plates. And so when I started talking to restaurants, I really didn't know a lot about the industry. But what I really quickly learned was that most restaurants are making most of their profit on catering orders because they're getting those efficiencies and those economies of scale of making a lot of the same thing. And because they're able to use their labor more efficiently because they know about a catering order in advance. And so we started to think, what if we could put together something for restaurants that resembles a catering order, but ultimately will be distributed to many individual customers? And so we started talking to restaurants initially in Miami. In hindsight, I think it was such a blessing to build the first version of this product in Miami because there were so many restaurant owners who were really genuinely interested in helping and sharing. I'll never forget just trying to understand restaurant unit economics. And one of the restaurant owners said, I don't really know, but here are all of my tax returns if you want to go through them and try to understand our costs.
Wow.
And I was sort of shocked, but at the same time, it really helped us understand how expensive labor was and how there was such an opportunity to help make it more efficient. I think, something that certainly learned with ClassPass and with MealPal is that when you're building a marketplace, you really have to make sure the marketplace works for both sides. And so we knew from day one at MealPal that we had to be really listening to what restaurants wanted and what would help them build a better business. I think there's plenty of feelings, I'll say, about delivery services and whether those are good or bad for restaurants. And we certainly heard a lot of those feelings, but being in Miami in 2016, delivery was certainly taking off, but it wasn't as crazy as it was in New York and San Francisco. And so we really were able to learn the model and figure out the model there before we expanded it to other cities.
So I think this will segue really nicely to my next question, which is, what lesson did you learn as a repeat founder that really helped you jumpstart MealPal?
Yeah. Lots of lessons. I think you just have this different perspective once you've started it before about how high the highs are and how low the lows are, because you have both sometimes within minutes of each other or within the same day. And I think being able to understand kind of what the path looked like was really valuable. I think the other thing, that was really valuable is knowing how important it is to find that balance between the supply side and the demand side and making sure you have a compelling product. I think with MealPal, we're really focused on having people get affordable lunch. You can get lunch for as little as $6. You can skip the line. You're going to be in and out in minutes. But we needed to make sure that value proposition for the consumers could ultimately be something that a restaurant owner would find additive to their service as well. And so constantly looking for that balance and really building a team that was focused on that balance, a team of people who are going to advocate for restaurants and really understand where the restaurant is coming from, and people who could similarly advocate for the consumer.
Great, thank you. I want to shift gears a little bit because I know the AMA session is almost upon us. I want to talk about leadership. So how would you describe your leadership style and what's made it so effective at ClassPass and MealPal?
Yeah, so I'd say I am constantly learning as a leader. I think having that growth mindset and kind of being open to feedback and open to change has been really important for me. I love feedback and have tried to really create a culture and an environment where people can be comfortable giving feedback about what they like, what they don't like, what's working, what's not working. I think at MealPal, we're really focused on hiring a team of people that have a couple of characteristics. We're looking for people who are incredibly hungry and motivated. We think that's something that, it's an internal thing. You can't teach somebody to be hungry. And certainly at a startup, you need to be really, really hungry for all of the challenges you'll face.
Especially at MealPal.
Yes, literally hungry. Yeah.
Couldn't help myself.
Yeah. We try to hire people who have a really high EQ. We want people who are going to bring out the best in the people who they're working for and who are going to be smart enough to say, oh, I'm doing this project with Bob. I know Bob works best this way. And so I'm going to lean into that. And hopefully Bob is leaning in similar to how that other person works well. And then finally, we really focus on hiring a team who is humble and is going to kind of be able to think about the greater good. I think having those three things, hungry, humble, and smart, which actually it's all based off of this book by Patrick Lenoshi, The Ideal Team Player, but having those three characteristics that we can point to has been helpful for the team in knowing that that's, we're hiring for people with these characteristics, but that's how we're all supposed to be behaving as well. I think as a leader, being able to point to those characteristics and to talk about what they look like and what they mean and why we value them has been really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those who are looking to join a really hot startup, hopefully you'll pick up that book and remember these secret ingredients to getting hired to your team. So I want to go back really quickly to the last point you made about the common good. So, obviously at Epic, we think a lot about, how we can help entrepreneurs weave social good into their businesses and in their lives. And so I'm curious what led you to signing the Epic Pledge and joining our community.
Yeah. So I met Alexander a few years back and his vision just resonated with me so much. I want to have a positive impact on the world and I want to help be a force of change and good and really be able to extend some of the opportunities and privileges that I've had to other people. And I think that's a common sentiment, right? People want to help, but sometimes the path to how you can help is not really clear. And so I think what's so nice about the pledge is it lets me focus on what I can do. And I can be an entrepreneur, I can think about products, and I can be a marketer, and I can think about sales and do things like that, knowing that some of the value that I create in doing those things that I'm good at can go towards that greater goal of helping other people and really playing a role in creating that good that Epic is able to create.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We're lucky to have you as part of our Epic Pledge community.
Yeah, thank you.
And so with that, I want to open the floor up for Q&A.
Okay.
I see there's already some great questions that have come through from our audience. And so the first one is management of a business. How do you balance collective consultation and respect of everyone's feedback with healthy decisiveness to give your staff a clear vision?
Yeah.
Really great question.
Yeah. It's a great question. So I am very much a quick start. So I have an incredibly high bias for action. And I also have a lot of really bad ideas. And so I think one of the things that I've learned as a leader is that it's really valuable to slow down and to let other people tear your ideas apart rather than starting to move really quickly on an idea. That being said, like there's definitely times where we have to make a decision and we can't really get collective consensus. I think conviction by one person is way better than consensus of many. And so, we really do focus a lot on communicating the why. So even if people don't agree with the decision, they can understand why we're making a certain decision. I think, even being in quarantine, I think one of the silver linings has been that it's forced us to be way more deliberate in our communication. We have, more meetings than we normally have, and they're typically short meetings, but we just have to create more touch points, which means that we're reiterating things more often. I think I used to think that, if I say something once, everybody knows it, everybody gets it, and we're moving on. But the reality is you have to repeat yourself many times. You have to say the same thing many different ways. And you have to sometimes write it down. You have to sometimes have slides, and you sometimes have to explain it with stories. I think, managing the business in such a way that we can really communicate our goals and objectives and why we're doing things has been really important. I think something that's actually gotten stronger being in quarantine.
Yeah, that's those are great lessons learned that Epic can definitely lean into as well.
Yeah.
And so that actually partly responds to another question that we have about, the crisis. And so Jalu said, "Hi, Mary. What do you see as the impact of COVID to both MealPal and ClassPass? What do you do to tackle the new challenges? And as both of them rely heavily on interactions with customers."
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's I think COVID for both businesses is not a great fit. Obviously pretty devastating. I think I think what's hard is we had such a strong start to the year. I think it was sort of this shock that hit us in March. I think one of the good things about it is it's forced us to put on our entrepreneurial hats again and to think about what this means. And, with MealPal, we've tested a lot of products while in quarantine and we've thrown away a lot of products, but we did tests around grocery boxes. We did tests around delivery. We did tests around dinner. We really explored a lot of concepts very, very quickly in order to see what resonated and what opportunities it was creating. I think, we have this exciting business to return to. And actually, we're finally starting to see July has been a lot of growth over the past few months. So we're certainly seeing people starting to be out and getting lunch again, nowhere near the levels that we were at in January, but it's exciting to see things starting to rebound. I think as a business for MealPal, we were really lucky in that we had achieved profitability and had already, we operated in a really lean and efficient way. And it put us, I think, in a better spot than perhaps many other startups where, they weren't profitable and suddenly lost all sources of revenue. And so while we haven't been able to stay profitable through COVID, we're not that far off. And I think, when things come back enough, we'll be there again very quickly.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And it's great that this has been sort of a sandbox for testing a lot of new ideas quickly.
Yeah.
I love this next question from Christina. So she says, in terms of thinking about launching a new business, would you prioritize passion or market opportunity? Ideally both, but curious for your thoughts on this.
Yeah, it's a great question. You have to have the passion. If you don't have the passion, if it's not a problem that you have or you understand really, really well, I think it's hard to build a business. I guess my example of that is, I'm passionate about fitness. I'm passionate about food. I think about when I was at Betterment, and I loved Betterment. I think John and Eli are amazing founders, but doing marketing for financial services, in my opinion, is like the most boring product to market. It's like, it's not a product that has a high degree of virality. People don't really like to talk about it. So you have to have the passion. I think if the market size isn't big, it's a question of, what type of business do you want to start? I think there's probably a lot of really attractive businesses that you could build that you have a passion for. And maybe it's not a global business, or maybe it's not a VC-backed business, but there's probably, it's more valuable to have that passion and to really care a lot about what you're solving and what you're building, I think, than to know that it's a big market.
Love that. Again, great question, Christina. So Alexandre has a question. How much is your team asking about purpose in their job? Is it easier to hire knowing your values?
Yeah. So our vision is to empower restaurants to build better businesses while enabling consumers to eat great meals and to save money. But I think so much of our purpose is tied to the purpose of small business owners. I think, before ClassPass and MealPal, I worked at Vistaprint, which really helps small businesses grow. I think that's where I first started to understand and appreciate how creative and capable and impressive small business owners are. I think so much of what we've done at ClassPass and MealPal has been empowering these small business owners. And so I think that resonates with a lot of people on our team. They really want to help restaurants grow. They have a passion for restaurateurs. They either want to be one or their family has been in that space and they really understand it. I think having that tie back to purpose is really important. And so when we are hiring, we're looking for people who that vision and the ability to help restaurants build a better business and to empower them to really grow and scale and do great things, it has to resonate with them.
Great, thank you. And then another question from Alexandre is for you. Is there a difference between a social entrepreneur and a tech entrepreneur?
Good question. Interesting. Yes, I will say, I don't know that I'm a tech entrepreneur. I think I built products that rely on tech and certainly leverage tech, but I feel like that is the world today. I think a social entrepreneur is being able to tie your company's goal and vision back to helping someone else and having a greater value on other parts of the world. And I think the two probably go hand in hand frequently, but certainly could be different.
Great. So I actually want to go back to culture. Another question that we have from our audience is, as a leader, how do you promote diversity?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question too. I think we want to make sure that voices are heard throughout our team. We are a fairly diverse team in that we have offices and employees really around the world, given the footprint of our markets. Our main office is in New York, but we also have a pretty big team in Charlotte. It used to be that those two offices were somewhat separate from each other. And so Charlotte was focused on Charlotte things and New York was focused on New York things. But since being in quarantine and everyone sort of being online, it's actually created a really great opportunity for the team to come together more, which has, I think, helped grow diversity within the team, because you have, engineers in New York interacting with CX folks in Charlotte and just kind of learning more about what everyone is going through, and even learning more about kind of the typical day-to-day for these different roles. And so I think that's been helpful. I think we are lucky to be a female-founded company in that our applicant pool is I think more diverse because of it. I know we have more female applicants than the typical tech startup. We actually have more than half of our candidate pool. Well, more than half of our candidate pool is females, which we typically assume is because it's a female-led company, and that's not quite as common.
That reminds me of sort of a fun team activity that you mentioned at MealPal around like team hackathons. Can you chat about that?
Yeah, we'll do sort of a MealPal version of Shark Tank, usually around our holiday party. So on the day of our holiday party, usually in December, we'll have different teams, and we'll have a couple of different objectives or problems that people can solve. And then people will come up with business ideas and they'll pitch it to the whole group. And we'll have a panel of judges. So we've had like advisors, we've had a restaurant owner on the panel once, we've had investors on the panel. It's usually some of the ideas can be pretty goofy, and I think that's sort of embraced as part of the day. It's sort of the lead up to the holiday party. So it's like kind of a fun Friday atmosphere.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of ideas around like delivery products. We've had ideas for other meals. We've had ideas around breakfast. I think you get people who are not normally selling or pitching suddenly in these roles where they're creating a PowerPoint and pitching and selling and, wearing sparkly capes and using wands to tell their story. And so I think it creates this fun opportunity for people to step outside of their normal work role and think about other ideas. And it's led us to say like, oh, this is an interesting approach, or how could we apply this to our product today?
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
So we have a great question from Vanessa. She asked, so you moved between two really different industries. Can you talk about the things you need to consider before diving into a new market?
Yeah. Fitness and food are certainly different. I went from working out like 5 times a day to now eating lunch sometimes multiple times a day. I think at the end of the day, there's not that much of a difference between the small businesses that we're working with. I think spending time understanding the industry was really important. Even, with MealPal, we're now working on a dine-in product, whereas our initial product and the MealPal product is a takeaway product. And now as we're thinking about an opportunity that we think is relevant post-coronavirus for dine-in, we've realized that we really have to go back and learn again. And so I'm pretty big on doing interviews. We actually, over the past week, have done about half a dozen waiter and server interviews just to hear their perspective on the technology they use right now. We know that any problem that we solve, we have to really have the perspective of the person who we're trying to solve a problem for. And so I get a lot of value in spending time talking to people. Certainly did that a lot with MealPal at the beginning. I think in the early days of MealPal, I was trying to understand restaurant unit economics. I would go to restaurants, I would show up at 11:30 and I would sit near the register or wherever people would check out. And I would start a timer on my phone and I would just keep track of how many people went by. I'd hit, lap every time somebody else checked out, just to get a sense of what's the efficiency. I think the more you can observe and see when evaluating another industry, the better, the more that's going to inform your gut in the future as well, because you'll have that sort of baseline knowledge.
Absolutely. I feel a little torn because I want to ask you two questions at once, but I saw a question kind of bubble up that's really interesting. So Devon asked, can you talk about some of the challenges in making these global businesses? As a customer of both ClassPass and MealPal in London, I expect there must have been some adjustments to the original American product. And as an aside, I think ClassPass now, from some of the latest blurbs I read, is in more than 30 countries. And then right now, MealPal is in more than 20 countries. And so exactly, Devon, like both are super global businesses. So yeah, curious how that evolved.
Yeah, so it is really important. I think it's something that with ClassPass, we were really scared to leave the US. We thought it would be really different, and it actually wasn't as different as we expected. But in the early days, we launched in very small US markets before going to London. And I remember when I went to London to start building ClassPass in London, within a day of being there, I said, oh my gosh, this opportunity is huge. I can't believe we haven't launched ClassPass London yet. I think the thing to know, and the thing that I think I've learned a few ways now, is you really have to hire local talent and people who understand the local market. One of the things that we found with MealPal when we were launching in Singapore is that there's this great hawker market scene that's very popular at lunchtime. Yeah, great food, but also already very affordable. And so we realized if our goal is to provide an affordable lunch option and the hawker market's already doing that, we need to figure out a way for the hawker market to be a part of that. And so skipping the line at a hawker market is way more appealing than it might be at some other spots. And so we had to create a two-tier product. With that, we had to come up with a new way to pick up meals because there's not a lot of space in the hawker stalls for technology. And so it was in Singapore that we first started using QR codes for meal pickup. And that was really a game changer for our business. It enabled us to have really great data about who's picking up meals, where and when, and really let us do some sort of tricky behind the scenes things with meal inventory so that if somebody hadn't picked up a meal yet, somebody else could potentially reserve that same meal. And so I think you have to go into it with the mindset of, you're going to learn things in different countries and you have to build in such a way that your product can be flexible and relevant to that market that you're launching in.
Thank you. And I want to end on a question, since you've been so candid and you've been so open about sort of the failures along the way in building these two incredibly successful startups. So Laura said, what do you do when doubt starts to creep in?
Oh yeah. It's hard. I think.
Do you fear failure? Do you have these?
Oh yeah. Who doesn't fear failure? Of course. Yes. I mean, I think fearing failure for me is a big motivator, right? I'm not going to fail. I'm going to figure out a way to get through this. I think, honestly, for me, running is a really great thing to do when I feel stuck. I feel like sometimes if I go for a run, my brain processes things differently. And I'm suddenly not at a computer and I kind of get some really valuable space to think. I think, that can be helpful when I'm trying to think through doubt and really think about where is this doubt coming from? And sometimes the doubt might be real. Maybe I doubt that we're building a product the right way, or I doubt that we're taking the right approach, or I doubt that we've understood a problem fully. And if that doubt is there, sometimes it's worth listening to because it could help you identify a better solution. I think it's also good, I think a huge value in having a co-founder that you can lean on. I think it's important and helpful to have a co-founder that you can be vulnerable with and you can appreciate the highs and the wins, but you can also kind of have those moments of wait a minute, everything isn't working. And we have these moments of doubt. And what does this mean? You can have somebody who hopefully can help remind you of kind of what is working and what is going well. I think doubt is something that I think everyone probably wrestles with to some degree, and figuring out kind of how you can deal with it individually and how you can learn and grow and get support from other people when that happens is really valuable.
I love that. Thank you for sharing those words of advice. I wish we had, the rest of the day to chat, because I feel like you have so many pearls of wisdom to share. But we're already a little bit over time, so thank you for everyone sticking around a little bit longer. But Mary, thank you for your time. Maybe we'll have you back at a later episode. But for now, thanks for sharing your journey. Thanks for giving us a little bit of a glimpse of what might be ahead for MealPal.
Thank you for having me and for all you do with Epic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, takes a village, right? Takes all of us. And so we are actually taking a bit of a summer break on the Epic Chats, but we will start these back up in September. So keep an eye out for the invite for those. Or if you want to just reach out to us with ideas on other amazing speakers or webinar topics, you can always ping us at epicpledge@epic.foundation. And then if I can ask everyone for a favor, when the webinar ends, please stick around for literally like 5 seconds. You'll see a little automatic Super Bowl commercial from us about the Epic Pledge, and we welcome all of you to, again, ping us and join our community so that we can build amazing businesses and support social good at the same time. So again, Mary, thank you so much, and good luck with MealPal. As someone who doesn't cook very often, I kind of survive on your platform. So
awesome.
thank you for everything you're doing. All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.